Hi, this is Tim Martin from the Falmouth Genealogical Society in Massachusetts, and I'm going to talk about creating floating trees at Ancestry.com. Now, a typical reason for wanting to do this is that you're going to work on someone's tree, work on researching them, and you're suspecting that they might somehow fit into an existing tree that you have. And if you create it as a separate tree at Ancestry, turns out there's no way of merging it to your existing tree. So you need to create what's called a floating tree within an existing tree. And then later, as research proceeds, you can create the connection between an existing person and this new branch that is isolated or floating. Now, think about this concept of floating branches in regard to FamilySearch.org, for instance. If you think about it at all, you realize that FamilySearch.org, in fact, exists with simply a number of floating trees. It's not a unified tree. It's a bunch of floating trees. Some of them are very large and might include millions of people, or some of them are medium size and some of them are small. But, people work in that unified space and they find connections between these various trees of different sizes. And so it's a wonderful effort and very fruitful and recommended to do this. But the point is that FamilySearch.org and any person's tree is in fact in some sense floating. It's not connected to other trees or any unified tree. So there you go. Floating trees are in fact the norm. So back to Ancestry.com, we want to know how to create a floating tree. So a good way to do that is go to any individual within your tree, and I suggest that you create a uh, sib a child of the individual. So let's say in this case it's a son or a male that we want to add to the tree, and let's say his actual name is Thomas Boy Jones. Let's say his actual name is Jones. Take note here, something's going to happen. Oh yeah, and let's say I'm going to say propose it, or I know that he's born 1900. This is just an example. I should be more diligent, but in this example here I go just a year. And it's easiest to select a single parent, and notice, beware here, when I can click that mood parent, it changed the Jones to mood, trying to be helpful to me, but in fact I need to go back and change it to Jones again. Now if I forget to do that step after the creation of the person, I can edit the name mood to Jones as it properly is. So you can recover from missing this step, but here you are, you can take care of it now. And so we can now create a Thomas Jones who's the child of John Mood. Save it. It notices an error. It says that the father's death, John Mood died 1865, but this is just a temporary measure to create an individual, so we can ignore that error here. And now we can finally create the individual, Thomas Jones. Here he is, as a child of John Mood and no mother. So let's go to Thomas Jones now. And this is the important step, is we want to detach him from a relationship to John Mood. The way we do this is entirely in the profile for Thomas Jones, we go to Edit Relationships, and notice here, while we're here, notice that this is where you define different sorts of relationships: adopted, step, related, guardian, so forth. So that's where you change the relationship type for an individual at Ancestry.com. But in this instance, we're simply wanting to detach, or the John Mood is the father. So I just remove the relationship. There it is. And now we can see if I go to Thomas Jones, say go to his tree, he's the only one. Let's go back to his profile. There's no connections to him. And now I have a very important step that you must not forget. Suppose you add Thomas Jones or you have other isolated branches that you're adding. It's easy to forget these individuals and even how to find these isolated branches. You must create a log of isolated branches or floating trees that you have set up in a particular tree. So I'm going to, in this example, suggest a text file, and I'm calling the file Martin Tree Floating Branches. And I suggest you at least put the name of the individual that you've created and copy in. I'm just selecting Thomas Jones and his birth and death. I'm doing a Control C, or on Apple it might be Apple V or something of the sort. So I've copied that. I'm going to go back to the text document. I do a paste. I'm going to choose to make this all in one line or one record. And so here's the one record. And now the most important step also here is to copy and paste or preserve the URL for the Ancestry.com profile for this person. So up here in the URL bar, I'm going to copy it, go back to the text document, paste it. There's the entire URL for use later. And I'm going to add, like, say on this date, January 19th, 2026, that I made this addition. I'm going to be careful and save the file at this point, put it aside. And so I've now created Thomas Jones, and I've made a record of it. Now the next very important step is, suppose after doing a bunch of research, I find out that Thomas Jones is in fact the child of Hugh March Jones that is already in my tree. Yeah, here's the way I should demonstrate this. I'm now going to find Hugh March Jones. This is the person who, let's say, I've learned is the father. In this example, I see, there is a gap in the, you might want to do this in a case like this is, does it make sense that there's a child wedged in there? And so I'm going to say, yes, this might be believable. So, and now here under Hugh March Jones, I can do edit relationships, and I can go down to children of Hugh March Jones and Aura Estelle Dolphin. I can add a child and select Thomas. Notice it's going to find someone in your tree, not a new person. This Thomas Jones already exists as in an isolated branch, but I'm going to do that, select that one and save it. And so now if I exit this relationship window, I can see that Thomas Jones was added in the sequence. So there you go. That is how to create an isolated branch and then how to connect the isolated branch to an existing individual. Thanks very much.